This is the Snodgrass podcast. Thank you again for joining me on another episode. Today, I have a special guest named Jim Crider from Texas. Before I talk about Jim, please go to the Brett Snodgrass channel on YouTube. We come out with videos each and every week, guys, so subscribing is the best thing that you can do. Also, ring that notification bell so you get all the videos that come out each week. Now, who is Jim Crider? I'm going to tell you right now. Jim Crider is out of Texas, and he owns and is CEO of the company Intentional Living FP, which is a financial planning organization that not only focuses on money, but also focuses on people living intentional lives. So is that for you? I think that it is, because we all want to give more out of life, have more freedom, have more time, have more money, and do the things that we actually really care about. And Jim does all of this in Intentional Living FP, and in his spare time, he spends time jumping on the bed, wrestling around with his 3 boys, or with his wife Kendra, or living a hiking adventure near Colorado. So now let's get to our guest of today's podcast, Mr. Jim Crider. What's going on, Jim?
Howdy, Brett.
Man, I love the howdy, Texas cowboy. It's awesome.
Got to represent.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Jim. I love what you're doing. I was kind of studying you, reading over you. I'm not a stalker, but I was just kind of studying everything that you're doing and your company, Intentional Living FP. So you're in the financial planning world, but you really have gone into talking more about intentional living, which I love talking about. It's about purpose and about, what do you really want, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into that, I would love to just tell our guests, who is Jim Crider?
Getting deep already.
There you
go. Jim Crider. I'm a dad. So I have 3 little boys. I have a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 6-month-old. I'm a husband. My wife, her name's Kendra. She and we've been married, coming up on 10 years here soon. I'm an entrepreneur. So I own a financial planning firm. That's me in a nutshell, I guess.
I love it. I love that you start off with a family, because some people, they say what they do, and that was the first thing. You're a dad, you're a husband. Sounds like you're really busy. I mean, you own a business, and you have kids that are 3, 1, and 6 months. That's really young. I'm sure the Crider house is like chaos sometimes. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it doesn't stop till the kids are in bed, and then once they're actually asleep. Right now, we actually just transitioned we have twin beds in one of the bedrooms for the kids. And we just moved our 1-year-old over to one of the twin beds with our 3-year-old. So we put them down at 7:30, but you hear them there goofing off till about 9:30, just throwing their monkeys and bears back and forth and falling off the bed. It's entertaining, but I miss the quiet nights. So yeah. One day.
That's so funny. We do the same thing. I have young kids, not as young, but I have a 14-year-old daughter, 7, 6, and 3. But same thing. Sometimes I'll come in, they got the diapers on their heads and playing diaper face or something. I don't know. It's crazy. But that's the same thing with our house, man. But that's awesome. Again, I love hearing entrepreneurs that are also family. They have balance in their life. And honestly, that is unique. So I really appreciate that. Now let's just kind of transition into intentional living. So you are the CEO of Intentional Living FP, which is a financial planning organization. So obviously, when I say the word financial planning, some people get excited. They're like, oh, I love planning my finances. It's amazing. And some people find it extremely boring because they're like, oh, let's talk about mutual funds, right? But you have gone a step further, and you really help people be intentional. So I want you to just explain to our audience, how is Intentional Living FP different than Edward Jones or some other financial planning place?
Yeah. Frankly, when it's all said and done, my job ultimately is to help you live the life that you want to live, understanding that your money is nothing more than a tool or resource that helps to help you do that. And where my role is to come in is not to sell you a product or assign you a mutual fund or to give you a one-time plan that's going to be dead the moment your life changes, but rather to help guide you to make smart decisions with your money, understanding the trade-offs and the implications as you're presented with opportunities, or challenges or whatever those look like, so you can actually align your behaviors, your decisions, your actions with what is truly most important to you in life. Yeah, that's what I do. And the money is just a way of supporting that. And that's why, like, frankly, Brett, I wouldn't consider myself like a math nerd. I guess I get excited about math because when I look at the numbers, it's just another means of supporting someone's life. So that's why, like, I love tax planning and investment strategy and all these things, because if I can find somewhere else another dollar, another percent, whatever that looks like, that's another way of furthering the cause of what's important to you. So that's why it excites me. So that is the underlying driver of what I do. And that really, that flows through the entire process, the way I interact and engage with my clients.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. So what does a typical meeting look like for you? Let's say I hire Jim Crider. I come in to Intentional Living FP. We sit down, our very first meeting. Most of the time with a financial planner, you talk about how much money you have, what you want to invest in, or, what their program is, right? So what's a typical meeting with you look like?
So just to clarify, so Brett, you're coming in, you're shopping financial planners. Can Jim Crider help you out? Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. One, I want to know about you. Like, who are you? Who's your family? What's important to you guys? I built my firm to work with a specific type of person. We work specifically with young families who want to achieve early financial independence so they can have more time to spend with the people they care about and the ability to pursue their passions. So if you come in and say, hey, Jim, I just want to work the rest of my life and I don't care about my family. I'm going to spend countless hours digging my head in at the office. It's like, okay, we're probably not a good fit because we're just misaligned on what we're actually going for here. So I want to learn about you. And that initial meeting, it is imperative that you and your wife are present. I want to have a full understanding of not just your goals. So goals, I'm sure, Brett, your goals have changed over the last few years, and they'll probably be different in a few years from now. So yeah, we'll get to goals in a few minutes, but I want to understand what's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Karen.
Okay. So you and Karen, I want to understand separately. So you as an individual, Karen as an individual, who do you want to be? What do you want to do in life? What are the things that you want to be known for and that are really at your heart's core? Those things, those values, what we call them, they tend to stay consistent over time. So that's where we start. What's important to you in life as an individual, then as a family? Then once we know that, then we go into some goals. Say, okay, perfect. If you say that you want to have more time freedom because family is really important to you, okay, well then let's assign a goal to that. Like, Brett, when do you want to have the option to not have to work? Okay, perfect. Now that we've established these things, then we'll get to the money. The money is just a way of driving those things. If I start off with like, hey, how many dollars and cents do you have? And are you overspending or, I don't know, do you have excess on a monthly basis? Okay, perfect. Let's put that in a mutual fund. We'd be so apt to actually miss what's important to you. It'd be ridiculous. One, it would be hard for me to do my job on an ongoing basis. If I'm managing money for a mutual fund's sake and the market goes down, there's no way to tie that back to what's important to you to keep you actually aligned with your behaviors aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. But two, if I don't understand, like, hey, you said that you want to not have to work soon so you can spend time with family, but right now you're neglecting your family. Like, my goodness, I'm not doing my job. You told me you want to spend more time with your family now. Like, let's do that. And then also that will inform the types of accounts we use for tax strategy, the investments themselves, all these things. So yeah, that's where it starts. It'd be like, if you went to a doctor and you said, hey, my stomach hurts, and they just said, perfect, hey, take this, like take some Pepto-Bismol, and they didn't adequately diagnose you. I mean, you could have appendicitis, but they didn't take time to actually understand the issue, and they could be massively misdiagnosing you. Yeah. So that's where you start. It's like, hey, what's really going on here?
Yes. No, I love that. So you kind of figure out like, what do people want and what are their goals? And you talk about goals a little bit. So let's get a little bit on that. So I come in, Karen and I are sitting down. We say, hey, I want some more time freedom. I want to spend some more time with my family. And I set some of these things up, and then you move to goals, right? And obviously goals been around forever, but like, do you do things a little bit different? Because let's just talk about how do you set goals for the family? And what does that look like?
Yeah. So let me just take a step back right quick, if you don't mind. One, we could look at this entire thing in a flow chart. The anchor of the flow chart is values. Okay. So understanding truly what's important to you, because those things probably aren't going to change. And then from there, we establish goals. Goals, again, as we mentioned a minute ago, goals are probably going to change. That's perfectly fine. So we establish up front, like, hey, I'm not going to hold you to this as being like 5 years from now, you said that you wanted to buy this house in Jackson Hole. And 4.5 years later, you're saying that, hey, I actually want to get a house in Telluride. I'm not going to say like, hey, you told me Jackson Hole, sorry. That'd be ridiculous. Mm-hmm. A goal is simply used to inform the best next step. We understand like, hey, that's probably going to change over time, but this will at least orient us as far as the direction we're going to head. So that's how we use goals. It gives us a general idea of like, all right, perfect. If we want to get from Texas to Indiana, we need to start heading north. And things are going to happen over time. There's going to be wind and turbulence and different weather patterns, all kinds of stuff that's going to take place, but we at least know what direction we're going to head. And yeah, we can get more narrow as we get closer to that destination.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you keep mentioning it. It really just depends. Sometimes your goals change over time. And I've really realized that. I mean, 10 years ago, my life was a lot different than it is today, right? I'm married. I have 4 kids now, and it's just different. So my goals, my priorities are a little bit different. What are some of the like common, like if someone walks into your office, what kind of shocks you, or what are some of the main common challenges that people are facing? Is it like, I don't know, because you're really digging into people's personal lives, right? And sometimes this is hard to talk about.
Yeah. I'm hard to be shocked now. I've had around 30,000 of these conversations at this point. So I've from the funny, shocking things, like I mean, years ago, I had a conversation with a guy who was about to retire. He had already given us 2 weeks notice. And he said, hey, I need my $400,000 from my 401k my employer was giving me. And we had looked around. I don't see anything here. Anyways, long story short, he thought that 401k meant that when you retire, his employer would give him $401,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've had those conversations, and I mean, just outrageous things like that gives you insight to average American's finances. It's pretty horrifying and shocking. So I can't be shocked as far as that. And if you think you're doing bad with money, like, trust me, you're probably, if you are doing really bad, you're probably in line with most people.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, as far as like normal things for people, like one, money's the number one cause of divorce in the US. And that was a huge influence as to why I actually got into this. Like, I didn't do this so I could look at spreadsheets all day. And I didn't love tax strategy up front. I just wanted to say, like, how can I actually help families have healthy money conversations and then use their money for what's important to them, rather than squandering it on things. So yeah, the amount of people who come in, it's like, hey, husband and wife are fighting or just not communicating. And because one spouse feels one way, another spouse feels another. But then after we open up and we go through these conversations, we find out that really y'all want the same thing. We're just approaching it from 2 different directions. So that's a really common thing, that it's so amazing to see a family come together and actually align their decisions and their actions towards what's important, rather than trying to approach it from 2 separate spots. That leads to those hard marriage conversations. So,
yeah. Sometimes you're like a marriage counselor too, it seems like.
Yeah, I probably should get a couch to have people lay down on.
That's funny. And I was always wondering, like, why finances are always like the biggest cause of divorce. Like, why is that always such a big problem for marriage? So I've been married almost 9 years, and we don't have a lot of conversations, or we don't have a lot of fights about finances. And I always ask myself why that is. And I think it's always just been because maybe we had money, and, we're pretty simple people. I guess we're both just kind of simple. So I'm not like spending a bunch of money. She's not spending a bunch of money, and we just have money. So it's never been an issue for us. I guess maybe we're just on the same page. But why is it, do you think, that it's the biggest problem in marriages?
So how you use your money is casting a vote for what you say is actually important to you. Okay. So if one spouse sees that, someone's just going and buying 3 lattes a day and buying a bunch of clothes, and that other spouse is really wanting to, save up for family vacations. Yeah, you're going to see conflict because, hey, you're saying that family vacation isn't important. Well, you're saying that my day-to-day happiness isn't important. Yeah, I mean, you show me someone's calendar and their credit card statement or paycheck or whatever. I'll tell you what is truly important on their day-to-day life. Now, here's the problem. Most people actually have stuff that's truly important to them. The issue is we get so caught up in just going through our day and our week that we are not using our time and our money with what's truly important. I mean, heck, how much time do most people spend on social media doing junk? And if you ask them like, hey, what's important to you in life? How do you want to spend your time? Oh gosh, I wish I could spend more time with my kids and, learn a new skill or something like that. Mm-hmm. But then we look and it's like, hey, you're watching Netflix for 4 hours a day. That doesn't happen on purpose. It's unintentional. And that's why we named our firm Intentional Living. So we can actually purposefully align what you want with what you're actually doing. I mean, that's even as a kid, it was like, I remember my parents and other people like who are older saying like, I've always wanted to go to Europe, but we can't afford it. And then I see a satellite on top of the roof. It's like, you say this is important, yet you're spending $4,000 a year on TV. Is Europe important or is TV important? Mm-hmm. You're casting a vote. And again, that's coming back to your question, like, why is that the number one cause of fights? Because again, you're casting a vote for what's important. And the really interesting thing is a lot of times people want the same thing. It's just approached differently. So maybe one spouse is spending a lot of money. Like I have a client, they were on the verge of divorce. I found out when they first came in, they were about to get a divorce. They've been working through this for the last time. And this was their last Hail Mary to get their communication direct. And what was going on was one of the spouses, the wife, they love to travel. And anytime they went on a trip, if they're going to Disney World, they're eating it all. They're getting the funnel cakes. They're getting all the pork chop on a stick or whatever. They're getting the Mickey Mouse ears, everything. She wants to make it big. The husband, he's like, hey, babe, we can take an ice chest. Who cares? That's not important. And that it sounds so minor. But when you have things like that on a day-to-day basis as well, those compound and lead to massive conflict. What was going on here, though, when we peeled it back, we found out that, well, the wife who wanted the Mickey Mouse ears for the kids and all these little things, when she was a kid, like they had nothing. And those in her head was like, that will cement this actually creating a moment in memory for our family. Like Disney World is a place of facilitating that, but it's all these other props that come in to actually allow this to be a time for our kids. The husband viewed it as, hey, if we're not buying a funnel cake, that's more trips that we can do later on. They wanted the same thing. It just wasn't being gone about the same way. So just understanding that just opened up so much more. So yeah, money conversations, it's so much deeper than people get it. It's like, it's not about mutual funds. Like that is so peripheral that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was at a men's retreat one time, and they were talking about like, what are your priorities? What is really important to you? And they talked about if you looked at how you spent your money and you looked at how you spent your time, and there was a third one, and you looked at what do you think about? If I could look at your mind, like what are you always thinking about? Those are the three things that would be really, really important to you. And it's funny that you're talking about this because a lot of times we spend our money on junk. Yeah, we spend our money on things that are important to us, but we also spend our money on a lot of junk, right? And we spend our time on things that are important, but we spend our time on a lot of junk as well. We also think about a lot of junk. And those two things, the money and time, also bring into our brain of what we think about as well. So obviously, I think that's what you're exactly talking about living intentionally and what do you really want, and just breaking some of these bad habits. Like, somebody that buys 3 lattes, they probably don't want that or need that. It's just what they do. It's just their habit, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about core values a little bit and finding people's values and their purpose and their why. And I always find sometimes this is a difficult conversation to uncover because sometimes people will come in and they'll say, this is the problem, but it's really not the problem.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So how do you kind of like uncover like the real problem and their real values? How do you do that?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic observation. A lot of people start with like, okay, what are your goals? Like most financial planners, that's where you get like, you'll sit down, either they'll start throwing mutual funds your way or an insurance policy your way, or maybe they'll ask like, all right, what are your next 5-year goals? Like, again, no, if you ask someone their goals, they're probably gonna give some arbitrary answer based off like what's on top of mind or something they saw on a TV show. Like when I was a kid, I thought I wanted a private jet. I didn't want a jet. I wanted the convenience of going where I wanted to without having the hassle of like trying to figure out airports. So anyways, how do we do this? So there's three questions. There's a guy named George Kinder who's been doing like deep financial life planning for decades. And he's come up with these three questions that I take my clients through. And I send this to them as homework prior to our meeting. And I set it up. I organize it where this is a date night for the husband and wife. If you're married, this is a date night for you guys. And then we're going to review these questions together. So we walk through these three questions. And I guess, Brett, that first question we go through is, Brett, let's say that you had enough money to live the rest of your life. It was no longer a care or concern. You're free to do as you please. You can spend your time as you want. What do you do? What does that look like? How do you spend your time?
Are you asking me?
If you want, we can go through that, but that's the first question. And you can tell like we'll go through spouse by spouse. And I ask that, hey, while the wife is speaking, the husband, please be quiet. Let's observe. I want to hear them open up. Like I want to hear them full. So
whenever you ask that question, it's funny. There's some people, just that question alone, does that freak some people out? Like I could, that, I don't know, like to have enough money for the rest of my life. Like, does that ever freak somebody out?
Yeah, there's a lot of times it's like, I can't even fathom what that would look like.
Yeah.
But again, I encourage so I send this out as homework prior to our meeting, and I send it out I found out what's, if you had a date night at home after you put the kids down, like what's a snack that y'all have at night? And I'll provide that. And I want to facilitate that moment for them to have this conversation together. And I provide a way of like, all right, here's what this looks like. Be open, like let yourself go, just dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of people are so day to day, they forget like, hey, let's just pretend for a moment, just so we can explore what would be out there.
Right.
So
that's the first question. And you're really kind of searching like what's important to you. How would you spend your time? Let's go on from there. Like I would probably, I do podcasts. I love having these conversations. I do a lot of content videos. I love just impacting people, helping people just from the experiences that I've had. I'm a kingdom believer, so I love talking about that. So that's what I would do. And, obviously it starts with my first mission field, which is in my home. So
that's good. So if we had, it's quite a long conversation. If we had time, I would dig into that further with you. Then this next question gets a little bit harder. So Brett, let's say tomorrow you go to the doctor, you just go in because again, your stomach hurts or whatever. And they pull you aside and say, hey, I've got some bad news. Turns out you only have 5 to 10 years left to live. Now, we're not sure when in that time frame you're going to pass away. Now, it won't affect your lifestyle or your health between now and then. But just having that news sink in, 5 to 10 years left, how would you spend your time? What are you doing in that time left?
Yeah. For me, it's just all about relationships. So I would really pull into people that really mean a lot to me. And I would definitely spend intentional time with them, pouring into them. Being available, but also, helping and say some of the lessons, especially to my kids, say, this is what I've learned. Right. And obviously in that moment, you've learned a lot, right? Because anyways, that's what I would initially do. So, and I would do some other things too, but.
Okay. Yes. We, again, just dig in. I want to see like, we're getting this, we start off with like dreams, like, oh yeah, this would be cool. If I had infinite money, yeah, this would be a neat thing to do. Mm-hmm. Your mortality becomes real. It's like, all right, these are the things that are a little bit more important. So then the last question here is, all right, so you go into the doctor and this time they pull you inside and say, hey, Brett, I'm real sorry to tell you this. You've got 24 hours left to live. Now, the question here is not how do you spend your last day? Like we could all have beautiful answers to that. But the question is rather thinking about your mortality, the little time you have left, and what all you're going to miss out on. Who did you not get to become? What did you not get to do? Who did you not get to be? What are the things that you missed or didn't get to experience?
Yeah. That's a deeper question.
Yeah. So that's when it comes down to it, that is going to expose truly what's important to you. So, oftentimes it's, for me personally, it's like, I think about that. That's a hard question. Like you just sit on that for a minute. Like I can't sit on that question and not tear up. It's right. Like, man, I never got to see my kids grow up. I didn't see them become young men. Yeah, it's so much thing. Like I didn't get to grow old with my wife. And there's peripheral things like, I didn't get to build this business the way I wanted, or, you know, we didn't get to spend time in the mountains. Like we said, it's like that fades back so quickly though.
Right.
Like, my goodness, here's what's truly important to me. Okay. Well, now that we've established that, like one, let's plan for those other fun things. But like, what can we do about this right now? Like you're saying that if you weren't here, you'd want to, like you said, for 5 to 10 years, like you'd want to impart these lessons to your kids. Like, okay, that informs a lot. Like, how are you doing that now? Are we setting yourself up to be able to do that later on? Like if you say it's important to be able to take your kids on a trip each year so you can show them culture outside of the US, like awesome, let's budget for that. Let's make sure we're investing for that and saving and planning. But also like, if I passed away, I didn't get to pass these lessons on to my kids. Like, hey, let's start a journal. Write a journal once a month saying, hey, here's something I want you to know. And I love you so much. And hey, you did this today. And one day you're going to face this. You can do it. Here's what I learned in my experience. Yeah. Like half of this is money, but half of it is like, these are the things that are important to you. Do it. And just allow your money to facilitate that in whatever way it needs to happen.
No, exactly.
So that's how it works.
I love it. It's funny, actually, so I've always had this dream of leaving these lessons for my kids, and sometimes it's easier just to write down things like you said, the journal. I actually got these 4 and 5. I got 4 for my kids and then 1 for my wife, and I'm gonna basically title them letters from dad or letters from your husband, and each month I'm sitting down and writing a letter from that month, you know, because all these things are passing by, you know, like my son's 6 years old and we're doing these different things, and then we just kind of forget, but just to start to relive that and say, man, you learned to ride your bike this month, you know, just things like that. And anyways, but I haven't even opened them yet. But again, it's just like intentionality. I gotta get on that. So I love that. So thank you so much for sharing those 3 questions. Those are huge. That's amazing. So obviously, you start to uncover, and that's a great exercise, guys, is to start to uncover what is really important to you and your values and your core values in your life. And then you start to set goals of intention around those things. Is that really difficult to do? Because, you know, a lot of times I'm a big planner. I'm a visionary. I like to create things and create business ideas and family ideas. And I'm kind of this big thinker, right? But sometimes executing it is really hard. I see a lot of that, especially in the business world. A lot of people can plan well, but they fail at the execution of it. So obviously you start to uncover these things. What is important to you? Your kids are important to you. My relationships are really important to you. Leaving lessons for my family is really important to me. Okay, so then you set goals around that, and then you set your money goals around that, and then has it been really hard for people to really execute, and how do you help them with that?
Gosh, okay, yeah, that's so good. You're right. Casting vision is fun and can be easy. Like we all have like, oh, one day I'm going to do this, but follow through is pretty weak. So one, you have to keep the vision in front of you. There's a business coach. She says regularly, when your vision is clear, the decisions are easy. So it's keeping that clarity of vision, what's important to you, and keeping that forefront. Because if you continue to keep that in mind, then you'll continue to align your decisions and your actions with that. So we're going to continually orient. Again, we can set up this plan one time and put funds in a mutual fund, but like it's the daily behaviors, it's the actions and decisions you make on a regular basis that compound to drive you towards what's important to you, or to let you coast through life and actually not do what you said is important. So how do we do that? We start with values, and then we set goals. So you say like, all this stuff is really important to me. Okay, like what does that look like day to day and year by year and at X point? So then we set these goals. All right. Once we've done that, first, then we understand like, hey, everything in life requires a decision. There's trade-offs in everything we do. There's opportunity costs. If you say you're going to do one thing, you are intentionally or unintentionally giving up doing something else. So we figure out like, all right, if you say this is important, then what do we need to give up in order to achieve this other thing? Or what's the trade-off here? So, and we have to understand that has to come out in the open. That way it doesn't sneak up on you. Okay. And then finally, once we understand those, so values, then goals, and then the decisions to be made, then finally, what actions do we actually take to align this? So everything I've said thus far probably sounds like I'm trying to be a psychologist and it's pretty pie in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
I love the nerdy financial planning stuff. And that's where like, I get to go take the more intellectual side of things. I was like, okay, what actions do we need to take? What's your savings rate need to be? What's your investment allocation? What type of tax strategies and asset location do we need to do? All that fun stuff. So values, goals, decisions, and actions. Once we started getting a rough plan thought through here, we come back and say, one, let's say we're going to do a pre-mortem. Have you heard of a pre-mortem, Brett?
No.
Okay. So a post-mortem, you can look back and like, all right, let's say you work at a morgue. Or if you're an investigator, you go through and say, all right, what happened here? What went wrong? What led to this?
Mm-hmm.
A pre-mortem is what we do with my clients is we say, all right, here's what you said you want to accomplish. You said these things are important to you and you want to do these things. You said you want to be able to have work optionality by the time you're 47 and you'd like to have a house in Jackson Hole and you want to send your kids to school and go on 2 trips as a family per year and XXX. Let's pretend you didn't do those. Instead, you're stuck working a cubicle job until you're 68 and you're commuting 3 hours a day. So you don't get to spend time with your family. Where did we go wrong? What behaviors did we do that did not allow you to do what's important to you? And we really dive into those. We get them all fleshed out. Oh, well, gosh, I was probably spending money on bad things and I wasn't budgeting and saving properly and I wasn't investing enough and I just got caught up in work. We get those out there. Say, perfect. Now we know the big things, the big pillars we need to avoid. Don't do these things. And once we get those out in the open, we know like, all right, here's a lot of traps that are probably going to come your way. So then that helps us navigate those decisions that we know we're going to have to make. Like, hey, you said that to not be able to work in a cubicle the rest of your life, but be able to start a business, you need the financial freedom to be able to quit a job to start a business. And you said a hindrance of that is not saving enough money right now. And now we have a decision to make. Do you increase your savings rate or do you go buy 4 lattes a day? And okay, like we knew this was coming. Let's navigate it properly. Yeah. So once we go through that, the final piece, we go through, we get all, then we do like the data gathering on the money, like dollars and cents. What have you done? What are you doing? Where do you want to go? We start getting a rough idea of the more normal financial planner things. Then we bring it all back. Say, all right, Brett, I want you and Karen together to come up with what I call a statement of financial purpose. So what that looks like is essentially just complete the sentence. We would like to have financial independence so that. And once y'all provide that, y'all collaborate and understand like, all right, we want so one of my mentors, he says their family statement of financial purpose is we want to have financial independence so that we can spend more time as a family, mostly outdoors. And they pin that. That's the top of, so for our firm, that's the top of the plan. Every piece of literature I ever get to a client, every annual review, every meeting we have, every decision we make, that's up top. And we assess the decisions we're making and the actions we're taking through that lens. If what we're doing does not increase your ability to spend more time with your family, and it's probably going to be outdoors more, then we need to reevaluate what we're doing. So that's it. It brings us back. So how do we continually adjust our lifestyle to make sure we're actually following through on these goals? We come back to that one sentence: have financial independence so that. There we go.
I love that. I love that. It just kind of keeps you in front of it. It's that visual, captivating that just keeps you on the right path. And I think that's just big. That's just deep, because I think anything that you do in life that is hard and you have all these bad habits and, but it just kind of keeps you going. I mean, I was doing, so I love doing videos and I love doing content, but I like to doing a lot of fun things, a lot of character things, weird things sometimes. And I was doing that yesterday, and I'm driving down, and sometimes I get just things in my mind, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if people are going to like it. All these different ideas, right? But then it's just that why. Like, why am I doing this? Well, I might impact one person, and that just kind of keeps you going. So yeah, I love that financial statement, and that's amazing. So one question I wanted to ask is that a lot of times, again, people have bad habits. You talk about the lattes a day. Some people have addictions, or they buy I don't know, just junky stuff. And that's just a habit because maybe it's an emotional thing, right? You talked about the Mickey Mouse ears. And so that's kind of this emotional ingrained thing. Like I want to have this big experience and this is what makes this big experience. And that's just a habit that she has. So it's probably hard to stop doing that. So do you kind of start off small? Because I think a lot of us have a lot of these like little bad habits that we're not even aware of. And sometimes it's hard to try to do all of this at once, right? It's just like, it's just overwhelming. Like if I can't buy lattes, I can't buy this certain food. I got to cancel my Netflix, my satellite TV. I can't go buy the Mickey Mouse ears. So like, do you kind of start off small and simple?
Yeah. And any coffee drinkers out there, one, I'm not telling you to stop buying lattes. I drink more iced lattes a day than I should. Fortunately, the place I work at has a phenomenal little espresso machine. So I'm just whipping those things up too frequently. My job is not to tell you what you should or should not do. Like I'm not saying don't drink coffee and save all of your, have a 50% savings rate so you can retire. Like, no. I just want you to fully know what's important to you. And then from there, I'm going to help guide you to actually align your life with that. Like you say you want to do something, like, cool, let's do that. And if you say buying 2 lattes a day is important because like you just really like the feeling of being in a coffee shop and you love a good coffee. Oh my gosh, like that's amazing. Let's do that. Like if that's something's important to you, like awesome, let's do it. So yeah, but then yeah, as far as like, if we do understand like, all right, you are, I don't know. I have a client. He's pretty funny. When we talk, he's like, Jim, I just spend probably several hundreds of dollars a month on junk food at gas stations. Anytime I get gas, I'm going in there and buying a few drinks and a few things of gum and a few things of chips. I don't know where it's all going. Can you help me stop? It's like, all right, well, yeah. Like again, he recognizes that's not important to them. So interrupting these habits. One, again, we have to anchor in what's important to you. You can't run from one habit and then go to nothing. You have to trade off one thing for another behavior. So again, that's where coming back and having that statement of financial purpose, having that vision, those values, that the clarity of vision. So when decisions come up, we can say, no, like I'm not stopping this. I'm allowing myself to go bigger on this. There's a book called Essentialism. And a quote in there says, basically essentialist, it's not about giving up on one thing, but rather allowing myself to go big on something else. So keeping that clear. And yeah, there's going to be times that getting over some behaviors is more difficult and it takes time. And my job's not to just ride you and hound you on that, but rather say, hey, like, how's it going? How can I keep you accountable? What do you need from me? And if that's the guy who's spending too much money on gum and chips, like I just reach out to him each Friday and I have insight to all of his accounts. Say, hey, your savings rate, we said, should be this, but based off your cash flow, it's actually a little bit less. Hey, what's going on? Like, did you actually have a need come up or did you maybe buy a little bit more than you should this week? And it's just over time adjusting and keeping that vision of clarity. Like, hey, we'll call him Sam. Sam, you said that you're in your late 20s. You said when you're 45, you want to be able to have a lake house and not have to work. Like, if you continue to do this, you'll be working till 49. Is that fine? If so, cool. Go buy your chips. If not, okay, let's just do that with clarity of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you're probably also a great reminder for people because sometimes we forget, like especially as the years go by, we forget where we were at and like how far we've came. An example was my wife. We've started to get into fitness a little bit more and, we're exercising, things like that. Well, this last week, it was my wife's birthday, so we kind of did a trip. We did some things with the kids and we kind of got a little bit off track and we had a week of just kind of, we weren't as intentional about our fitness and things like that. And then so she was a little bit down. So I was just like, well, look how far we've came. I mean, look where we at 6 months ago. Like, hey, let's just get back on the horse and just start here. So again, and I have a coach too that kind of reminds me of, hey, like, remember where you were at and because sometimes we forget, like, and it's just those little bitty steps. Like maybe this guy, he used to spend $700 at the gas station, now he's spending $350, and you're like, we're doing great, but let's just keep growing, right?
Yeah, and there's these small metrics. So we track on a very regular basis net worth, but for my client base, more important than net worth, I believe, is a number we boil it down to is your financial independence number. And what that is basically looking at any type of fixed income that you'll expect during retirement or that you have right now. So rental properties, or maybe just a cash flowing business that you can step away from and it'll still cash flow. Or if you have a trust fund, something like that. What is a set source of fixed income plus a distribution percentage of your investment assets and your cash? We add those two together. We say, all right, you said that to be financially independent and live the life you want to live, you need $120,000 a year. Okay. Right now you have $30,000 of fixed income and you have X dollars. You have $1 million of investment assets. All right. Well, based off that, you have roughly $70,000 towards financial independence. So you have 70 and you need to get to 120. So therefore you are, do the math real quick, whatever, 55% of the way there. Like, all right, perfect. And we just continually, very regularly track that metric. So we can see like, all right, are you progressing towards that financial independence where it's like, all right, I don't have to work. I can go and do something I really enjoy, or I can keep doing this if I already enjoy what I do. So yeah, keeping that as a way of like, regular pats on the back. I'm not here to hound you. I'm here to say like, hey, let's keep this going. You're doing great.
Yeah. Last question before we go into the last section of this show, because this has obviously happened to me, so this is more of a personal question, and I'm pretty aware of it right now, is kind of like that lifestyle creep. And it feels like, so I've been doing real estate investing for 14 years now, been pretty successful, and have a lot of financial independence right now, have some freedom. But as I start to look around, I'm like, man, like so I live in about a $300,000 house right now. I think we bought about $300,000, and I'm like, that's not that bad. But like, that was a huge deal, many years ago. Or I drive a Yukon Denali now, which is the most expensive car that I've ever drove in. It's not like a Ferrari or anything like that, but it's like, and I'm like, oh, that's not that big a deal. But it used to be. So like, I just feel like I'm in a relaxed mode, and I don't really like that about myself. And I'm like, I don't want to be relaxed because this is stealing maybe from things, because honestly, the $300,000 house or the Yukon really aren't that important to me. I don't care what I drive, honestly. So like, do you see that like lifestyle creep and people just get relaxed in their life when they start making some more money?
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I don't have an issue with you living in a nice house or driving a great car. The thing is you mentioned it. It's like, I don't know, it's creep. It's not purposeful. It just happens over time. And yeah, I've had so many of these conversations. A few years back, I worked in a role where I worked predominantly with physicians on retirement planning. So I was talking with most people who are making significant income. So, $400,000 to $2 million a year household income. Most of those people, most doctors out there, have the same financial worries as the average person. They just have bigger toys they're worrying about getting repossessed. The lifestyle creep. You talk to a 36-year-old physician. A few years ago, they were in residency making $60,000. Then they graduated. They went from making $60,000 a year to just making $60,000 a month. Yeah, you're going to probably see some creep there unless you have someone to coach you and guide you pretty quick out the gate. Yeah. That's a sneaky thing.
There's also probably, I was reading this book, which is one of my favorite books, called The Millionaire Next Door. And it talks a lot about that if a physicians, they're probably expected to live and drive and live in a certain area, drive a certain thing. So it's almost like they have an expectation too that they're probably dealing with.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So this is a few years ago, I was actually looking at joining another firm. So I was interviewing different financial planning firms and going to like big shops you've all heard of. They're national shops, and it was infuriating. I got really far in these processes, and it was like basically I had the job and would go to lunch with the executives or the higher ups. And they'd say, "Hey Jim, like we really like you, but for our clientele, they're not going to be impressed with." At that time, I was driving an Altima that just had a nasty beat up bumper and a cracked windshield. I said, "You can't drive that. We need you to get," they wanted me to get a Range Rover or, some Escalade, something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, we're here to put off a sense of success. So you need to get a new car. At that point, I knew I would not work there. Yeah. Because how outrageous would it be for me to spend my money on I don't care about cars. Mm-mm. It would be nuts and so hypocritical for me to spend money on a nice car when I'm telling my clients, hey, use your money for what's important to you. Mm-hmm. It's not about these other things. It's not about the Joneses. It's not about like what you thought you should have because you're in a certain position. Like if you love cars and you have the means, cool, go do it. But if you don't care about a nice car, you'd rather have more money to go and I don't know, again, I keep coming back to like going on a trip with your family or having a vacation house or not having to work sooner or leaving money for a legacy or giving more or whatever that looks like. Okay. Like do that. I want you to go big in what's important to you. And that's where, lifestyle creep and all these things, they just come in sneakily. And that's where you have to regularly take audit of like, all right, what are we actually doing? And is this truly important? Is this bringing happiness? And like, is this bettering our family? Or is this actually causing dissension? That's like, gosh, so many, again, it comes back to how many rich people, like Jeff Bezos, richest man in the world, famous divorce. Bill Gates just got divorced. Elon Musk, how many times has been divorced? I'm not saying those are all money related, but like money, you can't fix that.
Yeah.
And it's like, how are you actually spending your time? Like they made decisions. Like Jeff Bezos, I bet if we asked him in 1990, like, hey, you're going to be the richest man in the world, but you're also going to get divorced from your wife. Do you want that? I bet he would say like, I could do with a little bit less money. I really love my wife. Let's make sure this works.
Yeah.
But over time, that creep, it was not spending habits necessarily, but it was a slow lifestyle. It's like, gosh, let's be intentional. Let's make sure we're actually auditing what we're doing. So you're doing what's important to you.
I love that. I was actually thinking about that today. I don't know why this hit me in the head, but I was thinking about financial planning and I was thinking about the people that I talk to, and you're exactly right. Sometimes we're always focused on the money, right? Because you see a lot of YouTube channels or podcasts. They're all about the money, and it is just a tool. And I said, well, what if I could give you the money that you wanted to be financially independent? Let's just say it's $2 million. I could drop $2 million in your bank account, but at the same time, you're an extreme alcoholic. Would you do that? But I see a lot of things like that happen. These guys, they make all this money, but in the same time, they get addicted to certain things or divorced from their wife, and it's just kind of crazy, but it's exactly right, some of these people.
So the cool thing is, like, one, I'm the prototypical client of mine. Like, I'm 31, Kendra, my wife, she's 32. We have 3 kids. A few years ago, she wanted to be able to sit home, watch the kids. I wanted to start a business. We're navigating the challenges of raising a family and making decisions. Like, I understand the conversations my clients are having behind closed doors and the decisions that you're going to have to make over time. And again, as I mentioned, I've had about 30,000 of these conversations. So from people my client's age to people in their 90s. So I understand, like, gosh, looking back, I wish I would have done this differently, or I'm not where I need to be because when I was in my 30s, I wasn't doing these things that would compound to get me where I need to be, or I did these things. And that's why I'm successful. And it allows me to peek around that corner and know, like, all right, here's what's probably going to come. Like, let's anticipate this. As far as like, would you trade this? Looking back, would you trade the $1 million or $2 million for if you had to be an alcoholic? A quick, relatively sad story that sort of drives why I do what I do. Years ago, I was having a conversation with a physician that made well over $1 million a year, and he was in his 60s and perfectly financially successful. And what happened was, like, we started talking, like, hey, what was money like growing up? Like, how did you get here? He was saying, like, man, when I was a kid, we had nothing. I heard my parents fight about money all the time. It was horrible. We didn't know when the powers can get turned off. We wore hand-me-downs that were full of holes, and it made my childhood miserable. I got picked on and made fun of, and like, I didn't know what we were going to eat. And I just didn't want that for my kids. I wanted them to have a better childhood than I had. I wanted them to be happy and successful and have opportunity. It's like, wow, it's awesome. It's like, okay, that's why I decided to work hard in school so I could become a doctor. It's like, wow, look, you actually did it. You're a doctor. You're making great money. Like, that's so awesome. You did it. How's your family? And at that moment, we realize we've traded too much. Like, oh man, it tears me up. Like, in that conversation, he realized very quickly, his kids were grown. They had families of their own. He said, man, I've made way more money than I thought I ever would. And I have the means of giving my kids new clothes, and they didn't have to worry about lights getting turned off or hearing us fight about what groceries we can and cannot get. But I realize now that I don't know my kids. I was never there with them. Yeah, they didn't hear my wife and I fight about the money and getting the power turned off, but they heard us fight about all the different toys and how we shouldn't do this and do that. And yeah, I guess I do have a lot of money, but I missed what it was there for. I told myself I wanted this so my kids could have a good childhood. I have no clue if they had a good childhood because I realized now I never knew them. It's like, my gosh, if I could have met you when you were 35 rather than at 65, I wish I could have given you a better time with your kids. And that sobers me up every time I think about it. It's like, oh, let's do this purposely from the get-go.
Yeah. Man, I love that. I love that. And sometimes I think we overcorrect. And I think I do that too. I grew up, my dad, great dad. My parents are still married, and my dad's getting ready to turn 70. We're going to have his 70th birthday party. But it was a lot about performance and athletics and things like that. And sometimes I feel like I've overcorrected because I was like, my dad, was pretty hard on certain things when it came to athletics. And I was like, I would never do that to my kids. So like, I'm almost like don't push them at all. Just like, anyways, but I think we just overcorrect in life. And thanks for sharing that story. That's amazing. Jim, we are pretty much about out of time. So any other tips that you want to give our audience, and then kind of give where can you find you and your information?
Yeah. Any tips I'd have? Like, I don't know, allow your daily behaviors and those big things. Like, what's going to happen is you have daily things that come up, and those small things compound. And then every once in a while, you're going to have a major decision that's going to make a big dent in your life. Like, if that's going to get you where you want to go or not. Just do those daily things purposefully. Keep in mind, like, yeah, if you're overspending or if you're missing an opportunity, like, just capture that. Like, just let those little things compound over time. And when those big things come, like recognize, like, hey, this could have a large bearing in my life. Let's do this purposefully. But keep in mind, like, what it's truly for. Is this getting me closer to my statement of financial purpose, or is this driving me away? And allow yourself to make decisions in context for what is truly important to your family. Yeah, that's what I'll leave for you there.
Awesome.
As far as, I guess, contact, my website, it's intentionallivingfp.com. I'll actually have I'll have a landing page for your podcast. So intentionallivingfp.com/ yes, I'll just BSP. So you guys go there. Yeah, I'd be happy. You can throw 15 minutes on my calendar. If you have a question, like as simple as, hey, can you explain my 401k to me? Like, I'd be happy to spend 15 minutes talking about your 401k. Or if it's like, hey, what were those 3 questions again? Like, all right, hit me up. So
yeah, I love that. We're going to put that in our show notes, guys, on our YouTube channel in our description. So that's intentionallivingfp.com/BSP, which stands for Brett Snodgrass Podcast, BSP. So check that out in our description, guys, on the Brett Snodgrass channel on YouTube. Jim, thank you so much. I always like to end the show with a little fun. So I basically have 4 questions for you. These are super short answers, less than 60-second answers here. So these are just some fun. This is called Jogging with Jim. I don't even know if you jog, Jim. You kind of look like a jogger, but maybe. But I always like the anchor man when he says yogging, so it could be a silent J. So jogging with Jim. Anyways, the first question is, so Jim, if me and you were jogging together, we were side by side, what would we talk about?
I mean, you've heard an hour of this already. I like hearing I like fun questions too. Like, hey, Brett, if you could have a vacation house anywhere in the world, where would it be? And I want to hear detail. What would it be like? So I like fun stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just imagining that right now. I love that. All right. So in your bio, you said that you chase around your kids a lot. So obviously you have young kids. You're chasing them around. So what do you love to do with your kids?
Oh gosh, we play a lot of dinosaurs and monster trucks and Legos. Tons of wrestling. 3 little boys basically just hop on the twin beds, and I'm just throwing the kids around, and they're jumping on my back. That's how I spend my evenings, is getting beat up by my kids. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Sometimes in the mornings too. My kids were jumping around the bed in the morning this morning.
Yep.
So, all right. So you also like adventure. So what is an adventure that you like?
I like to go backpacking. So every summer for the last 12 years, I've gone backpacking with a group of guys. We usually head up to Colorado, and like a month ago right now, we were hitting the trail. We did about 50 miles in the South San Juans.
Wow.
So yeah, I like to do that. And then a little bit lighter adventure. My wife and I try to get away each fall and head back to the mountains and do some light hikes.
Okay.
So,
no, yeah. I love that. That's cool. All right, last question. What's your favorite meal after a nice jog or exercise activity?
I mean, if a nice meal for that would be probably something clean. So ideally, if I could have a nice lean, like filet, just get some protein, and then also just a good clean salad, just to balance it out, that would be pretty ideal.
Awesome. Sounds good. And that's Jogging with Jim, guys. Jim, thank you so much for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I appreciate you. IntentionalLivingFP.com, guys. Check it out. It's a wrap. Jim Crider. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.